Marvel World Unleashed, Villain Resurrects Ancient Gods from Myth. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 1. New York City today is still an ordinary day. Bustling people flow through the streets, and the big screens in Times Square are flashing colorful advertisements about Stark Industries' new weapons. Pedestrians on the street have long been blind to all this, but a young man under the large screen in the center of the square is a little dumbfounded. It was a man with Asian characteristics, but unlike the flatness of ordinary Asian features, his facial features were comparable to those of Europeans. Coupled with the height of nearly 1.9 meters and not weak muscles, this is enough to make him quite attractive to the sexy and generous European and American women around him. But at this time, the young man's mind was completely not on the women around him who threw themselves flattering. He looked at Stark Industries on the big screen above. Tony Stark is showing it in a very dashing and arrogant manner. Stark Industries is known to be the best weapons company on the planet, and our latest research and development of the Jericho missile is powerful. The young man sighed as he listened to Tony Stark's boast on the screen. His name is Liang, and the reason for sighing is nothing else. It's just that he actually crossed over. And even crossed into the Marvel world. Although Leon doesn't know whether he traveled to the Marvel Comics universe or the cinematic universe, he understands one thing. Ordinary people, it is really difficult to live in the Marvel universe. Just when Liang was about to find a place to slowly think about what to do in the future, a prompt suddenly sounded in his mind. Ding! The host is detected and the system is automatically turned on. Liang's handsome face instantly became pleasantly surprised. He knows. Crossers will not lack benefits. He immediately found a quiet cafe and sat in the corner. When no one was around, he quietly read all kinds of things about the self-system. After a few moments, there was a bit of clarity in his eyes. After understanding, he has understood the usefulness of his system. In simple terms, his system allows him to acquire abilities by making up stories. But only if people believe it. Let's use an analogy. If he succeeds in making up a mythical story and convincing hundreds of millions of people, he will get the abilities of the corresponding mythological figures. This is a system that is caused by deception but is the result of truth. After knowing the usefulness of this system, Liang fell into deep thought. He was a deep lover of the Cthulhu mythos in his previous life, and perhaps he could make it up. After all, he didn't know much about other myths. When he had made up his mind, the system sounded a prompt again. Detected that the host has not been fabricated, the first fabrication gift package is now issued. Please check the system space backpack in time. Liang was overjoyed when he heard this, and then opened the backpack silently in his heart, and the system backpack page that only he could see was presented in front of him. The backpack space is not large, and the 3x3 square is like a game backpack. At the top of the backpack is the gift bag given by the system. Open pack. With Liang's whisper in his heart, the system gift package opened. Congratulations on obtaining a second-order strength card, a first-order creation card, and a shelter card. The 3 cards were neatly arranged in the backpack, and Liang checked the information of the 3 cards separately. Second-order strength card, using this card will give you full second-order strength. First-order creation card, use this card to create any first-order thing, not limited to living and dead things. The host of the created object will have complete control over it, and the living creature will remain permanently loyal to the host. Shelter card, use this card to transform a place into a shelter, which will have the power of a system within which the host will have unlimited autonomy, and the presence of the shelter will not be able to take any hostile action against the host. The information of the 3 cards gave Liang infinite joy. These 3 cards, no matter which one they are, can be said to be extremely precious to Liang. First of all, Liang's own safety has been greatly guaranteed. Let's not talk about the invincible buff of the shelter, just that second-order strength card is extremely valuable. According to the introduction of the previous system information, if the strength of the second-order existence is converted to the Marvel world, it is at least a father-level existence. Leaders such as Odin and Gu-Yi are leaders in this field. This also means that as long as Liang uses this card, he will directly have the same strength as Odin and Gu-Yi. Even a little more is not impossible. Liang collected his self-excitement, and then walked out of the cafe. Now, he was looking for a place to use the 3 cards. Episode 2. In addition to the exact same appearance and name as Leon, the body that Liang crossed over also had a bookstore in Brooklyn, New York. After leaving the neighborhood of Times Square, Liang came to this bookstore. The bookstore is not large, about 20 square meters. On the two ceiling-facing cabinets are various books, and there are descriptions of the types of books in different compartments. The inside of the store is clean at the same time, and even the corners are basically dusty. The bookstore door is two glass doors, and behind the door are two lockers, each with a pot of flowers. These decorations and details are enough to prove that the former was a man who lived a very emotional and careful life. The counter is in the deepest part after entering the door, surrounded by bookcases on two sides. There is also a staircase next to the counter. After Liang entered the store, he locked the door of the store. At the same time, pull down the roller shutter above the gate. In this way, the inside of the bookstore cannot be seen from the outside. The room also became dark, and Liang turned on the light according to the memory of the predecessor in his mind. Then he walked towards the stairs next to the counter. Winding up the stairs, Liang came to the second floor of the bookstore. The second floor is the residence belonging to the predecessor. Although not big, bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, everything. Liang came to the bedroom table and sat down. Then a square card with a reflective sheen appeared in his hand. It was a second-order strength card given by the system package. The color is a deep gray black, and the luster reflected under the incandescent lamp is somewhat mysterious. The material cannot be judged, not metal but not plastic. This is not a material that Liang's limited cognition can judge, and when touched, a strange mood spreads in Liang's heart. At this moment, Liang was like an adventurer standing in front of the gate of unknown territory. And using cards means completely pushing open this unknown door. He didn't hesitate. According to the information given by the system in his mind, he easily broke the card. Immediately, the broken card turned into a mysterious point of light and gently merged into Liang's body. A huge and gentle force made Liang involuntarily close his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, a sharp and mysterious luster flashed from his pupils. But, in a flash. Is this what is called extraordinary power? Liang whispered. He tried to lift his finger. The next moment, something magical happened. The carbon pen in front of him slowly floated in the air, and then drew one trajectory after another in the air. Liang waved his finger lightly, and then pointed towards the wall. The carbon pen turned into a shooting star in an instant. Bang! A muffled sound passed, and the carbon pen had already disappeared into the wall. Liang looked at this scene, and the corners of his mouth gently hooked. At this moment, the uneasiness that crossed was replaced by excitement. But the excitement in Liang's heart did not last long, and he quickly regained his sobriety and sanity. As a traveler, he knows very well how deep the water of the Marvel world is. Of course, the strength of the second order is very considerable on the Earth, but if it is placed in the entire universe or even the entire multiverse and the transcendent universe above, the second order strength is nothing at all. Liang likes stability, and he will not reveal himself until he does not get enough strength as he thinks. Then he pulled out his shelter card. After a gentle break, the bookstore plus residence on these two floors was transformed into his shelter. The power of the system invisibly shrouded here. From then on, any existence who stepped into this place would not be able to face up to Liang. When his self-safety was initially guaranteed, Liang took out the first-order creation card. He examined the card, and then silently opened the main interface of the system. Host, Liang. Strength level, second order complete. Each level of strength is divided into early, middle, late, and complete. Influence points, 0. Number of fabrications, 0. Shelter, 1. The influence points displayed on the main screen are the most important things for Liang. Relying on influence points, Liang can create things out of thin air, travel through time and space, and so on. And through these means, it is possible to make up a convincing mythical story. The more people believe in the myths he concocted, the stronger he can become. According to the introduction of the system, Liang will make a settlement after each fabricated mythological story. At the time of settlement, the score is determined based on the number and identity of the number of believers in this fabrication, and the number of basic influence points invested. The higher the score, the more influence points will be returned to Liang. The more convenient it will be for the next fabrication. Just like investing, the bigger the investment, the greater the return, but also the greater the risk. Reckless fabrication will only lead to unequal output to input ratios. And now the influence point is 0, which means that Liang can't use the influence point to make it up at all. This also means that all he can use is this first-order creation card in his hand. Of course, his own second-order strength is also extremely convenient, but the system has a very strict judgment on fabrication. If you rely on your own strength to directly distort the cognition of ordinary people, then it is not made up, but brainwashing. This approach will not be recognized by the system. Therefore, in the fabrication, its own strength can only play an auxiliary role, not as the main role. Liang was playing with the creation card in his hand, and in his mind he was thinking about how to maximize its effect. The light of the incandescent lamp shone on his pupils, and a little yellow light burned in the black deep pupils, which made him look a little mysterious. Liang lightly slammed the table with the card, and he had an idea in his mind. What could be more likely to influence people than religion? The corners of Liang's mouth couldn't help but curve. The next moment, the creation card in his hand slowly bent and changed. The rudiments of an evil and filthy statue began to slowly form. Episode 3. This is the beautiful country of Massachusetts. Most of the terrain is filled with hills, on which lush trees and bushes grow. Various wild animals and insects possess and enjoy these wild natures. In addition to this green hilly terrain, Massachusetts also has a large area of sea erosion because of the Pacific Ocean to the east. The stones are washed out of various shapes by the sea. Barrel, star, twisted worm, oval. It's a stone lover's paradise, but most of the stones here have small holes in their surfaces. For the Myterians, this is again hell. And between this wild nature and sea-eroded landscape, the top universities of the beautiful country also make their home here. Harvard and MIT are both located in Boston, Massachusetts, and there are some of the top high schools in the United States. Under such objective conditions, Massachusetts has naturally become the most intense academic and educational atmosphere in the United States. But what no one would have thought of was such a place, which seems to be extremely rational and intelligent, will also have the most primitive and ignorant rich religious atmosphere in the beautiful country. Barnstable County. This is a small county in southeastern Massachusetts, bordering the sea and beautiful natural beauty. The population is not large, only 220,000. There are many fishery workers here. After all, it has the great advantage of being close to the Pacific Ocean. Today's pier is still as crowded as ever. Unloading, going to sea, fishing. Various crowds gather here. Francis, the captain of a small fishing boat, went out to sea last night for a night fishing and just returned this morning. There were many people who knew him on the dock, and many people greeted him when his boat approached. Francis raised his hand and smiled in response. Then came the unloading of last night's catch. He walked to the warehouse below the deck of the fishing boat and then moved box after box of fish to the deck. Last night's harvest was good, which made Francis very happy. After all, it represents real money. But it also made him feel admiration and reverence in his heart. Ah, thank my God for your blessings. Francis put his hand on his forehead and said silently. The fishermen on the dock couldn't help but be envious when they saw box after box of catch on the deck of Francis. Damn, Francis has been returning home with a full load for a week in a row. Yes, what the hell is going on here? Why don't I have this life? What an envy. This week's harvest is estimated to be more than Francis's harvest in the previous half year. Why don't we ask him later? In the discussion of the fishermen, Francis finally finished removing the catch in his cabin. When he walked to the deck again, the fishermen who were watching shouted, "Hey! Francis, how did you manage to return home with a full load for a week in a row? Yes, did you find any good places? Francis, can you reveal that?" Francis looked at the curious and puzzled fisherman and smiled. No, all this is God's blessing. Francis, standing in the sun, grinned in response to the fisherman. This made the fishermen look at each other, and then someone asked, "Do you mean God?" No, my God is not God, but another God, and since I believe in that God, I have received corresponding blessings. Francis retorted loudly, the muscles of his face trembling faintly in the sunlight, and it didn't look like a normal human posture in a trance. On the contrary, it is a bit like the gills of a fish. The fishermen were a little curious about Francis's words. In Massachusetts, attitudes toward religion are extremely permissive, and for this reason, most of the people who live here have their own gods. Especially for these low-level fishermen, religious belief is a stubborn attribute of them. Francis's words had aroused the fisherman's curiosity about the unknown deity. After all, based on the current facts, it seems that the god will indeed give the believer a good catch in return. Whether it's out of curiosity about unknown gods or driven by the profit of the fish in front of you. The fishermen of the dock expressed their desire to follow Francis to see the new god he believed in. Francis, on the other hand, simply agreed. He will take this opportunity to preach to his god. So how can a great deity be worshipped only by his family? Let him say, those tall churches should all priest his gods. Oh, God. God will not bring him a good catch. Episode 4. When the fishermen of the pier followed Francis to the basement of his house, the fishermen were all fascinated by the statue in the center of the basement. Their eyes showed ignorance and loss of concentration similar to that of half-dreamed people, and they looked as if they were addicted to some kind of dream. Their gaze was completely drawn to the evil and strange statue in the center. Francis and his family knelt down and prayed towards the statue with enthusiasm and excitement. Oh my God, I have brought my companions to admire your greatness, and grant them your well-being and forgiveness, and they will offer you the most faithful faith in the future. Francis knelt on the ground, his eyes red as he looked at the statue. At this time, his expression no longer has the calm and peace that human beings should have. Instead, it is full of beast-like restlessness and hideousness. The light in the basement is weak. The faint light doesn't even illuminate the whole basement. And when a group of fishermen crowd in this basement, the light of the basement becomes even darker. But under this dim light, the statue in the center is strangely clear. In the center of the basement is a square table. Above the square table, there is a small square pedestal. Above the pedestal is the statue of the evil and strange deity. The statue is not large, about 10 centimeters high and 4 or 5 centimeters wide. It depicts a monster with faint humanoid silhouettes. However, it has an octopus-like skull, a face with a cloud of tentacles, and a scaly torso that looks like rubber. It has huge claws on its front and back feet, and narrow wings on its back. It seemed to be filled with an unnatural and terrifying malice, and its slightly bloated and fat body crouched evilly on a rectangular stone or pedestal. But such an appearance seems indescribable to humans. From the body of the statue exudes an indescribable fear and evil. It's like a cold wind blowing from the deepest cave. At the same time, a huge attraction also exudes from its body. This attraction lured the fishermen into the abyss of unknowableness, and with it, reason was lost. Thump. Suddenly, a fisherman knelt down. His face took on an expression similar to that of Francis, and then he said loudly, God, this is the God I dreamed of. Allow me to bow down to you and pray to you. When the first fisherman did this, the group of fishermen all knelt down and prayed. Their expressions gradually unified. It was a look called fanaticism and hideousness. In the dim light of this basement, this scene looks extremely evil and strange. But under the background of that central statue, there is inexplicable harmony. Like. This is how it should be. It's like. All this is supposed to be evil. At the front of the fisherman, Francis humbly slammed his head on the ground, his mouth muttering some strange syllables. Gradually, his cheeks changed slightly. The muscles there are gradually layering. It's like transforming into a fish. But no one present saw such a change. Or rather, even if they see it, they won't care. Half a month passed quietly. At some point, Barnstable County became weird. More than half of the inhabitants began to worship an unknown deity. But when asked who the god really was and what it looked like, the inhabitants were indescribable. They always used words such as indescribable, great, sacred to describe the unknown deity. And along with this strange phenomenon, there are also abnormal catches of dock fishermen. During this time, the dock fishermen received as much catch each day as they had in the past week. And these fishermen also attributed this entirely to the relief of the god. In addition to this, churches with special priests for the gods appeared in Barnstable County. Believers who went to visit the deity always walked out of the church with a strange look of contentment. It looked like a dream. This strange phenomenon finally caught the attention of Barnstable County authorities. They immediately dispatched police officers to investigate. However, it turned out that the police officer also became a believer in that god. In this situation, the governor of Barnstable County formally requested assistance from the higher Boston state government. He also reported the matter to Harvard University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The poor Barnstable County governor tried to find the reason for the strange changes in his jurisdiction from the world's top scholars. The two universities immediately became curious about the situation in Barnstable County. They immediately said that they would send professional scholars to investigate. The state of Boston agreed to send the National Guard to assist in the investigation. However, they will not realize what they are going to face. Nor will it be thought of what will happen next. Episode 5. 2 universities and people sent by the Boston state government arrived in the county center of Barnstable County after 2 days. Harvard University and MIT sent 6 professors and more than 24 doctoral students, and the Boston state government sent 60 National Guards to provide armed support. But when the little 100 people really saw the current situation in Barnstable County, fear, dismay, surprise, disbelief. The complicated expression from the bottom of their hearts made them stunned in place. Although they had imagined what they would encounter when they came to Barnstable County, the scene in front of them was far beyond what they had anticipated. Just look at the streets and alleys are full of strange-looking pedestrians, all holding a thin page of a dark green book in their hands. As they walked, they could clearly hear the whispers coming out of their mouths. That weird and obscure syllable doesn't look like human language at all. Their expressions were feverish and excited, and their eyes were filled with redness that only made them stay up late. Their facial muscles all show an inexplicable weird feeling, especially their cheeks. The muscles there are beyond the limits of what scholars like Harvard and MIT understand about human muscles. A professor who studies the human body immediately exclaimed, "Their cheeks are like the gills of a fish." In addition to these eccentric pedestrians, Barnstable County has also appeared large and small eccentric priesthood places. These priesthoods are strangely shaped, looking rectangular in shape, but at the entrance are coffins that look like erections. Above the entrance of those coffins are also carved unknown inscriptions, which look full of evil and strange meanings. These priestly places are all made of stone, so they look a bit rough. But this did not stop the fanatical influx of believers. The oddities of Barnstable County immediately led the National Guard chief to apply for higher-level assistance from his superiors. His intuition was telling him that it was dangerous here. By contrast, academics at 2 top universities are overwhelmed by curiosity. At their behest, the National Guard randomly asked a pedestrian to come and question him. But when questioned by the National Guard and scholars, the pedestrian was unnervous. Even the obvious excitement was beyond words. "Believe in our God, who will bless you with the most wonderful garden." Instead, the pedestrians who were questioned began to preach to the scholars and the guards. His attitude angered the members of the guard in front of him. The members of the guard shouted a rebuke. "Shut up, I don't have the energy to listen to you say this, you hurry up and tell all the information about your shit god, otherwise I will arrest you for resisting law enforcement." In beautiful countries, the National Guard is a violent organ higher than ordinary police, and their attitude towards ordinary people has never been very good. Generally speaking, when members of the Guard threaten civilians with such words, the other party will always obediently choose to obey. But this time is different. The moment the members of the Guard in front of him finished saying those words, the believers who were still excited to preach immediately became fierce. In the next second, he threw himself straight onto the Guard member's body and started to pounce and even bite. "How dare you insult our God, you are looking for death." With the mad roar of the believers, his figure was pulled apart by the members of the Guard on the side. The members of the Guard who had just fallen to the ground were already seriously injured at this time. One of his eyeballs was detained by the believer. The empty pupil was oozing blood. Such a tragic situation immediately angered all the members of the Guard present. They immediately arrested and beat the believers in front of them. But what they didn't expect was, when they handcuffed the mad believer, a group of believers with the same crazy and fanatical expressions had surrounded them. Bang! Members of the Guard fired warning shots. But it did not deter these gathered believers in the slightest. At this moment, the believers who fell to the ground shouted, "They insulted our gods and killed them." When this sentence was spoken, the eyes of the believers all appeared with killing intent. "Go and die." With a roar that rose out of nowhere, the believers all rushed towards the members of the guard. The commander of the guard immediately made a decision and shouted, "Use police weapons. Carry out the drive." When the words fell, dozens of members of the guard unfolded their batons, and they did not hesitate to confront the rushing believers. Bang bang. Accompanied by the sound of batons pounding, cries of pain also continued to sound. Blood appeared on the faces of the believers. But they had no intention of retreating. Even crazier. Finally, one of the team members was thrown to the ground by the crazy believers, and then 7 or 8 believers began to beat him without limit. In an instant, blood splattered, and the team quickly stopped struggling. After seeing this scene, a wave of anger surged in the hearts of all the members of the guard. The chief directly raised his hand and shouted, "Damn, I declare that the group in front of me is a mob, using riot guns and tear gas." When this order was given, the conflict escalated on the spot. With the firing of riot guns and the firing of tear gas, the scene immediately became a smoke-filled battlefield. The believers fell in large numbers, either wailing over the parts of their bodies hit by riot guns, or coughing and drooling from tear gas. In a short time, the siege of the guard was lifted. Just when the group just breathed a sigh of relief, more believers rushed out from the streets in all directions. They occupied every corner of their vision, their expressions crazy and dangerous, and their eyes full of obvious killing intent. This scene is very similar to a scene in a zombie movie. The isolated protagonist team is surrounded by endless zombies. The members of the guard who were surrounded in the middle looked at this scene and felt fear in their hearts. Are these people crazy? Damn, what the hell is wrong with this place? Fark, sir, or let's retreat. Listening to the request of the members in his ears, the commander of the guard looked solemn. He wanted to retreat, but where could he retreat now? The streets are occupied by countless believers. Do you want to drive a road out? Fack. Listen to my orders. Now all the people seize the building in front of them as a stronghold, and hold out until reinforcements arrive. Before the commander came, he never expected that this mission would turn into such a scene. Are these believers really crazy? An unprecedented fear surged into the chief's heart. At this moment, he only hoped that reinforcements would arrive as soon as possible. Episode 6. Washington, D.C., SHIELD Headquarters. Nick Fury received a report from the state of Massachusetts today. When he read the report in its entirety, his black face darkened. Then he pressed the communicator on the table. "Natasha, I'll go to the office after you finish work." Answering Nick Fury was a somewhat capable female voice. "Okay, Fury." Immediately, the communication ended. And Nick Fury walked to the tall floor-to-ceiling window. He looked out through the SHIELD building, where the meandering and gentle Potomac River flowed quietly, with rows of buildings and flowing pedestrians on the other side of the river. Everything looked so beautiful and peaceful. But this scene did not soothe the uneasiness and anxiety in Nick Fury's heart. He recalled what was on that report. Cult? Riot? Uncontrollable fanaticism? Physically mutated humans? Every line of text and pictures on that report made Nick Fury think of an organization. An organization that has been fighting with SHIELD for many years. Hydra. After all, this method of manipulating the masses by relying on mind control and physical modification is too similar to them. As for the cult sacrifices mentioned in the report, Nick Fury guessed that it was a cover given by Hydra. Otherwise, how to explain the strange body mutations of those believers? Only Hydra's body transformation can speak of the past. After so many years of incubation, why did you choose such a fanfare operation this time? Have you already planned something? Nick Fury thought to himself. He has largely targeted the source of the conflict in Massachusetts at Hydra. But he wouldn't have said this inference until there was clear evidence. As an agent, it is dangerous to judge based on experience. Time passes minute by minute. There was a knock on the door of Nick Fury's office, and then a red-haired woman in a black tight-fitting agent suit walked in. She has deep facial features and a hot body unique to Russians. Coupled with the wistful smile at the corners of her mouth, she looks extremely beautiful and seductive. But the faint dangerous aura that came out of her body made people wary. "Fury, what happened?" Natasha asked casually as she sat down on the couch. Nick Fury looked at the other party, his only remaining eye showed solemnity and seriousness, and then said, "There's a strange thing happening in Massachusetts, and I need you to deal with it." Nick Fury said and handed the previous report to Natasha. Natasha took it and looked at the report carefully. And her expression became more and more weird and serious. A moment later, Natasha put the report down and she asked with a slight frown. Is this report serious? A fanatic believer in unknown gods? Some believers have also mutated in their bodies? And an armed confrontation with the personnel of the state government army? Nick Fury nodded and replied. That's the case with the report, but you still need to see for yourself how the scene is. I see, I'll leave right away. Natasha got up from the sofa, and her beautiful face had become extremely serious at this time. She hesitated for a moment, then asked a question. Fury, will there be a Hydra mixed in behind this matter? Nick Fury was silent for a moment and said in a deep voice. It's like their approach, but everything needs to be further investigated. If it's them, then I need help. You can say that I can help you as long as I can provide it. Nick Fury showed his demeanor as a S.H.I.E.L.D. boss, but Natasha just chuckled. No one else, you can just let Barton help me. Well, do you need anyone else to help you? No need, the fewer people needed for the latent investigation, the better. Natasha left this sentence and turned to leave. And Nick Fury also immediately sent a message to Hawkeye, and then he arranged for several unrelated people to go to Massachusetts to investigate the matter. Although there are Natasha and Hawkeye as Dark Line's lurking investigation, S.H.I.E.L.D. also needs to make some appearances on the bright side. Otherwise, it is impossible to say for those congressional masters. After doing this, Nick Fury picked up the report again and looked at it again. He focused on the information on the report about the body mutations of believers. There is no clear picture information about this part, only some blurry photos taken from a distance. All that can be seen is the silhouette of the mutant believer. But just looking through these blurred silhouette photos is enough to see the horror of those strange believers. Looking at them, Nick Fury couldn't help but think of the Skuru people he had seen. But compared to the original Skuru, the strange creature in this photo has an innate evil atmosphere. This breath made Nick Fury's heart unstable. Hopefully it's just a conspiracy by Hydra, otherwise. Nick Fury sighed heartily. At the same time, the thought that had been hidden in his heart for a long time became more and more urgent. The Avengers must be formed. Episode 7. New York, Brooklyn. Liang has been in this world for half a month. In the past half-month, he has been living by running a bookstore like his predecessor. Fortunately, the predecessor did not have any relatives and friends, which saved Liang a lot of trouble. Today he opened the door as usual and went about business. In his spare time, he always reads a book and a newspaper behind the counter. Since he had obtained a complete second-order power, his heart had become calmer and calmer as if he had undergone a refinement. Under such a mentality, he is not so interested in the disturbances of the online world. In contrast, the sense of relief that comes with paper books has left him somewhat obsessed with it. In addition to reading, he will occasionally check the situation of this fabrication through the power of the system to prevent anything from going wrong in the middle. When Liang had just picked up a book and sat down at the counter, the door of the bookstore was suddenly pushed open. Then a blind man wearing sunglasses walked in. He is not tall, and his appearance is also polite, holding a blind cane in his right hand and a book under his left armpit. If Liang hadn't known the true identity of the other party, he would really treat the other party as a vulnerable group. Matt Murdock. This is the name of the other party, and it is also the Daredevil in Marvel. Matt, are you here to return the book today? Liang asked with a smile. Yes, I finished reading this last night. Matt Murdock said as he placed the book under his armpit in front of Leon. Although he is blind, his posture has been completely the same as ordinary people since he came in. Matt Murdock's visit to Leon's bookstore can be said to be a coincidence. Probably on the third day of Leon's crossing. It was a rainy day. There was no one else in the bookstore, and Liang was reading quietly. Suddenly, a figure pushed open the door and walked in. It was Matt. The other party was soaked by the rain, and opened his mouth to take shelter from the rain here. Liang promised the other party. Later, while sheltering from the rain, Matt found Braille books in the bookstore. In return for Leon's actions, Matt bought a Braille book on the spot. After that, for convenience, I often come here to borrow books to read. After coming and going, Matt and Leon also knew each other. You read fast enough. Do you spend most of your day reading? Don't work? Liang took the book and quipped. Matt smiled and responded. There hasn't been a lot of business in the law firm lately, so there's a lot of free time. As someone who knows Matt's current situation, Leon knows very well that Matt's law firm is not just a small business. That is, there is no one at all. After all, no one trusts a newly opened law firm. Especially since this law firm is still opened by a blind man. Even if the law firm is cheap. Do you still want to borrow books today? Liang asked. Matt nodded. Okay, then you go find it, just come to me and swipe the card. There is a Braille book area in the bookstore, where blind people can judge the title of a book by touching Braille, etc. Matt then went to pick out the book. At this moment, thunder suddenly sounded outside the bookstore. Then there were raindrops falling, and the momentum gradually increased. It looks like I'm going to hide from the rain here again. Matt turned back to Liang and smiled. It's okay, no one will come here anyway. Liang responded. Matt smiled, and then carefully selected the books he wanted to read. After screening, he picked out a book about medicine, and just then his phone rang. Matt opened his phone and received a text message from his friend Fergie Nelson. Matt, look at the news, there is a large-scale armed confrontation in Massachusetts. After knowing the content of the text message through the voice recitation, Matt couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Compared with other states in the beautiful country, Massachusetts has always been a very peaceful state, and it is really strange that such a state can also have armed confrontations. Liang, who also heard the content of the short message, smiled slightly. If I want to watch the news, I can turn on the TV. Liang said casually. Matt was stunned for a moment, then nodded and thanked him. Thank you, Li. You're welcome. Then Leon turned on the TV in the bookstore and found the news channel. At this time, the screen was playing the scene of the Massachusetts confrontation, and the voice of the female host also came from the side. We understand that a religious group may be behind this confrontation, and we hope that the local state government can sit properly when handling this incident. After all, everyone's religious freedom should be protected. Leon could tell that the scene in the picture was Barnstable County. State police and believers are confronting each other, numbering in the thousands. Behind the people facing off between the two sides, there are tens of thousands of people waiting in strict formation. Such a scene is a big battle even if it is put in a beautiful country. You can't cover it up at all. It's really a chaotic world. Religious believers have even grabbed guns and confronted the government. Do I live in a beautiful country or in the Middle East? Matt couldn't help but sigh as he listened to the broadcast on the TV. It can only be said that it is worthy of being a beautiful country, and everything is possible. Liang said with a smile. Matt was stunned, but immediately nodded, deeply agreeing. At this time, in the wasteland not far from Barnstable County, a military stealth transport plane had arrived. Then, Natasha and Hawkeye walked out of it. Episode 8. When Natasha waved the transport plane to leave, Hawkeye spoke. I didn't expect you to take the initiative to ask Fury to come over to assist you, a little flattered. Hawkeye's joke made Natasha laugh a little. Why, did you bother to accompany your wife? In a sense, it is. After the two joked a few words with each other, their expressions became serious. They looked at the scene of the conflict not far away, and both of them frowned. This scene reminds me of a previous mission in the Middle East, which was also due to religious conflicts. This time it's a lot more serious than that. Natasha replied casually and then took out S.H.I.E.L.'s special positioning device. It's something like a cell phone. After some operation, the positioning information of Natasha and Hawkeye appeared on the device screen, and the map information of this piece was also displayed. Hawkeye also took out the device and did the same, and then the two hung up the communication headset. The report says that there are mutated humanoid monsters, so I'm really looking forward to what will happen next. Hawkeye said as he examined his bow and arrow. You'll know later, okay, act according to the plan, I'll sneak in first, and you will support me nearby. Good. After the two communicated, the figures of the two sides separated. Natasha walked towards the scene of the conflict ahead, while Hawkeye searched the heights. After more than half an hour, both sides moved smoothly. Natasha successfully entered martial law Barnstable County after cross-dressing. Hawkeye is hidden from a height. Oh my god, the city is a war-ready fortress, with guarded pedestrians on the roads and guns in every hand. Hawkeye was also surprised to hear Natasha's voice coming from the headphones. To be able to make a group of civilians like this, I don't believe it is purely religious. Hawkeye whispered to the person on the other side of the headset. Natasha walking the streets of Barnstable County thinks the same. According to the report obtained by S.H.I.E.L.D., there was nothing unusual in Barnstable County half a month ago. In just half a month, the entire city fell into a state of religious frenzy. This instantly reminded Natasha of some kind of mind control device. This also evoked the haze in the depths of her memory. For a while, Natasha's heart was even more angry and disgusted with the people hiding behind this incident. Just as Natasha was pretending to be walking as an unconcerned pedestrian, a group of believers suddenly came to her. "Hello, dear lady, are you not yet believing in our gods?" The leading believer asked Natasha amicably. His face was inexplicably weird, and even that smile was a little scary. Natasha appropriately showed a reclusive and weak posture, and said with some fear, "What gods? I've been working from home before, and I haven't been out for a long time." The eyes of the believers showed joy. "So that's the case, no wonder you don't have our breath on you, but the whole city has believed in our God in the past half a month. Do you want to become a believer in my God together?" "This. I need to find out first." Okay, please come with me." The believer turned around happily, and Natasha quietly followed the other party. After some walking, Natasha came to the government building in Barnstable County. The once solemn government building is now extremely eerie. What should have been a smooth exterior wall was now potholed, and Natasha recognized it at a glance as a sign of a gunfight. On these potholed surfaces is a layer of viscous green liquid. The green liquid was artificially smeared with one strange and evil ancient symbol after another. Beneath the symbol-filled walls, bright red blood flowed. Looking at the blood on the ground, it was obviously still fresh. The blood flows like a slow-crawling maggot, weaving blood stains on the ground one after another. If you look down at it, it looks like some kind of hell drawing. Green viscous liquid, blood flowing, fanatical believers walking around guarding. Everything is like some kind of evil religious scene. Natasha is playing the role of a naive woman on the surface, but her heart is several times more vigilant. At the same time, the footage here is also transmitted to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters through the miniature device she carries. Nick Fury also frowned when he looked at this scene. "This is our sanctuary, you come with me." Lord Bishop welcomes new people to join us. When the faithful speak of the words sanctuary and bishop, their expressions are clearly zealous and reverent. Natasha hummed softly, and then walked in with the believer in front of her. As she got closer to the entrance of the building, Natasha could clearly feel the strange change in her heart. She actually had some kind of trance. It's like a momentary loss of concentration. This is extremely unusual for her. A bad premonition then arose in her mind, just as she was about to report the situation to Hawkeye in the distance. Worse came the case. The signal was interrupted for unknown reasons. And at this moment, Natasha walked into the government building. An even more terrifying scene suddenly appeared in front of her. In the middle of that hall, corpse after corpse stacked on top of each other forms a strange symbol. They were wearing either National Guard uniforms or civilian clothes. The demeanor of each corpse before death was extremely distorted, as if it had suffered great pain. On the exposed skin of these corpses, they were also smeared with a sticky green liquid. A normal person must have screamed when he saw this scene. This is the most evil scene in the world, and it is the weirdest scene in the world. If there is a ritual to summoning demons, it must be in front of you. Oh, please don't be afraid, it's just a ritual of our priests and our gods. These people are not sorry to die, please don't care. The believers comforted Natasha on the sidelines. Natasha gestured appropriately in fear, but her hands were quietly ready. As soon as there is a slight abnormality, she will draw the gun. Episode 9. The government building in Barnstable County has 3 floors. Natasha followed the believers up one step after another, and everywhere she saw scenes filled with viscous green liquid and blood. The people who pass by on the road are also weirder than the other. In addition to their uniform fever and agitation, Natasha was also keenly aware of the strangeness of their faces. The unnatural trembling and undulating cheek muscles make them look extremely weird. This immediately reminded Natasha of the mutation in the body of some believers mentioned in the report. A moment later, Natasha came to a door on the 3rd floor. The sign of the conference room is still posted next to the door. But the eerie and strange aura faintly coming from the gate was telling outsiders that this was no longer a calm conference room. "This is where the altar of our sanctuary is located. Lord Bishop is in it. Please come with me." When the believers say nothing, they knock on the door. Knock knock. 3 crisp sounds also sounded in Natasha's heart. The vigilance in her heart has risen to an extreme. At this moment, a voice came from inside the gate. "Come in." The words were hoarse and strange, completely beyond the reach of human vocal cords. The believer pushed open the door respectfully. The door opened in front of Natasha. And it was at this moment that Natasha clearly saw the scene in this conference room. The walls, which should have been white, were painted in an eerie blend of black and dark green. The tables and chairs that should have been displayed in the middle of the room were completely absent at this moment. In its place was a small altar, 2 meters high. The altar is made of stone, and above that altar is a strange statue of evil more than 10 centimeters high. The moment she saw the statue, Natasha's tempered mind was immediately hit as if she had suffered some kind of heavy blow. At that moment, she seemed to see the existence of some ancient evil. The opponent's body is as tall as a mountain, his eyes are like stars, and countless tentacles climb down from the other party's body, squirming endlessly. Behind that ancient existence is an incomparably chaotic and huge temple. In this instant, Natasha's ancient intuition forged through countless trials of life and death played a role. Her nails subconsciously pulled out blood marks on her hands. The pain allowed Natasha to regain her clarity. Her consciousness finally returned to the real space from the illusory world like the deep sea. But before she could think about it, she saw the terrifying creature standing next to the statue again. It was a humanoid monster whose head was gradually changing into a fish's head. Dark green complexion, wet body fluids covering the surface, the tender red of blood and flesh can be seen between the opening and closing of the face, and from the deep flesh and blood there are small tentacles probing outward. The normal facial features have become distorted and deformed, completely dislocated. The moment she saw the humanoid monster, Natasha suddenly felt an extreme disgust in her heart. That is the emotion that human beings only produce in the face of some kind of natural enemy. Ah, Protestant. The humanoid monster looked at Natasha with delight. He walked slowly towards Natasha, and it was at this time that Natasha noticed that the other person's footsteps had changed into something similar to flippers. The shape of the human foot is completely invisible. When the other party walked up to Natasha, a close look allowed Natasha to clearly see every small bag raised on the other party's skin, and there was even some kind of weird squirming under the small bag.